Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lauren Veneer, and I am a Senior Program Associate with the Inclusive STEM Ecosystems for Equity and Diversity, or ISEED program at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and I work on our AAAS ARISE initiative. We are pleased to be hosting today's webinar titled Designing Curriculum for Pre-Service Teachers and Teacher Leaders. And we are excited to hear from our presenters today, Dr. Jeremy Zelkowski, Dr. Paige Evans, and Jacqueline Yakoba. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes. This presentation is being recorded. The recording will be made available in the coming days on our website at AAAS-arise.org. And you will also receive an email with a link to this recording when it's available. We will transition into breakout room discussions following the presentation to allow for deeper engagement, and these breakout rooms will not be recorded. Additionally, we have closed captioning for this webinar. You can download and view the full transcript by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. So before we jump into the webinar, I wanted to provide a little background about AAAS and ARISE. So AAAS was founded in 1848 and is the world's largest multidisciplinary science society and a leading publisher of cutting-edge research through the science family of journals. AAAS is dedicated to advancing science, engineering, and innovation to benefit all people with the specific goals of strengthening and diversifying the science and technology workforce and fostering education in science and technology for everyone. More information is available at AAAS.org. ARISE, which stands for Advancing Research and Innovation in STEM Education of Pre-Service Teachers in High-Need School Districts, seeks to provide resources, tools, and a community to foster research and evidence-based innovation in STEM teacher education and leadership development programs. The ARISE network, which builds off of AAAS's provision of technical assistance to the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program, collects and shares information about topics and strategies for research and evidence-based approaches to prepare STEM teachers for the future, assess efficacy of teaching, and understand effective ways to recruit, train, and retain a high-quality STEM teacher workforce. You can learn more about ARISE on our website or LinkedIn page, and you can also follow us on Twitter to stay up to date on our latest events, blogs, newsletters, or to share what you've learned today at this webinar. So now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter, Dr. Jeremy Zelkowski. Jeremy, over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Welcome to all of our participants from across the nation on this very first day of February. I'm Jeremy Zelkowski, Associate Professor of Secondary Mathematics Education at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and the current PI of our active NSF Noyce Track 3 Master Teacher Fellowship project noted here. Thank you all for joining the webinar today. I hope to have the ability to provide you with those interested in pursuing writing a Track 3 proposal for master teachers, valuable information in writing such a proposal and shaping a curriculum plan for your master teacher fellows. So my presentation will focus on general ideas to consider in planning and writing a curriculum plan for Noyce Track 3 Master Teacher Fellowship projects. I first want to acknowledge my team members and the graduate students who participated either in the planning and writing phase or those who are currently engaged in implementing our active project. I want to also pay a little bit of tribute to Dr. Philip Westbrook, who's not shown here, but he was our educational leadership co-PI in the planning and writing phase of our project and could not pass up a lifetime opportunity and left the university in the first year of our project. And another colleague, Dr. Bill Bergeron, entered Philip's role as an educational leadership specialist about 9 months into our project. I'm going to spend my 20 minutes or so with a heavy time on a limited number of slides. So please take personal notes and prepare questions for the breakout discussions and Q&A at the end of today's two presentations. The important aspect of what I have prepared today is that every project is going to have different goals, but that those goals need to be the primary drivers of the curricular plan that you develop and propose in your proposal. My presentation is designed to explain that reasoning that is unique to Track 3 proposals as maybe what would be the same or different for Track 1 and Track 2 proposals in the Noyce family of funding opportunities. As shown here, we suggest a minimum of 6 months in advance of submission, preferably up to 9 months, and that will make a little sense as I go into this in greater detail, to have your project goals initially drafted and written in a way to be able to share that with potential teachers. Let me explain why. It is critical, in our opinion, to have a well laid out set of goals that can prompt discussions with teachers and ultimately central office personnel in your partner districts, or at least those that you intend to have as partner districts. This is because Noyce Track 3s, you should know the potential master teacher population in which you will recruit, whereas in Track 1 and Track 2s, you may not know a single future teacher who may be funded in those proposals. Once your team has specific goals and what knowledge base will be expanded by your project if funded, how will you carry out collecting data and evaluating your project and the research and the implementation of the project? And that can be related to your intellectual merit. If you meet your project goals, what will the field benefit from learning about your Master Teacher Fellows project through conferences, papers, and even the Noyce summer conferences? What broader impacts will society, your local school partners, and do you expect to estimate or project to impact? What are your desired outcomes in your local community in which your master teachers will come from? It was our experience that this NSF one-pager summary of the intellectual merit, broader impacts, and our overall goals of the project was a great handout and flyer for teachers to quickly read, understand if this would be a project for them, and then ask questions during interest meetings that we hosted. You need to know if teachers will be specifically interested in what you're proposing in your curriculum. You could propose a whole lot of things that teachers may not have interest in participating in. So there were times when teachers didn't understand the language of our proposal or the one pager. We found that very beneficial in helping us edit to be clear and to reach a broader audience of readers in shaping our proposal. Basically, we felt that that one pager should end up being whatever it ended up looking like would be our cover page to our project if it was funded, and where our recruitment would begin in pointing teachers to consider whether they would want to participate. Ultimately, our meetings with teachers led us to change the language of our goals as well as the curricular sequence and design, for which I'm going to go much deeper into these points. But if you do not have teacher buy-in and really good evidence of the population that you can draw upon for meeting your proposed number of master teacher fellows, proposals may not necessarily be convincing to reviewers, but also a struggle in getting school administrators and district central office personnel to buy in to be partners. We found that to be the critical part of the method that we used in designing our curriculum. Our website homepage here shows exactly what was our final one pager in our NSF summary page. So if you go to that link at some point in time, you will actually see exactly what was our one pager summary. How we got to that point was a journey for which I'm about to share how our curricular plan was shaped into a successful proposal being funded. So this phase took us about one and a half months. We basically had 4 interest sessions throughout the month of February with interested local teachers. We sent out what our first draft looked like for that one pager to teachers in the area. We sent that to schools to circulate to teachers. We also had a second page, which is essentially all of the benefits of participating in such a project that local teachers might have interest in. So it was essentially a front and back one-page handout in which schools just administered to teachers as well as us through emails to teachers in the area that we knew. Essentially, we were recruiting our pre-recruits, if this grant was to be funded, at these meetings, but with the idea of flexibility and what our vision was that needed to change to meet teachers and what would be possible for them. We spaced out over about a 3-week period these interest meetings to hear from multiple teachers that could attend at different times, but also make revisions to the one-pager as we would move from forward meeting to meeting with the teachers. We surveyed the attendees as an exit slip to each interest session to allow for anonymous input that they might not want to share with us verbally in those meetings, but to give them the ability to provide input that may not be shared verbally. That helped us shape the proposal as it was being written. And we also had a strong level of an idea of what the level of interest would be in the buy-in from teachers. Once we also, and this was something that I was able to do because it was in the month of February, the Association of Mathematics Teacher Educator Conference is usually hosted in February, and I actually arranged meeting with some master teachers from other projects in which I knew the PIs of those projects from. So I had the opportunity to hear from teachers who were actively involved in such a project in their local context. At each of our meetings with local teachers, we had a one-pager handout that was on the front and back, and we drafted the 5 years of activities that we thought we would be putting in here at each meeting. We connected the proposed project goals, the intellectual merit and broader impacts with that one pager. This was revised session to session based on teacher input, and where the final meeting was essentially what the draft ended up looking like that you see on our webpage. Once you have a solid picture of your intended curriculum outlay with input from teachers, we moved to the district level. Having teacher buy-in first and their survey responses made the discussions with central office leaders for us almost too easy. We informed the district leadership, obviously, that there's going to be partnership letters that they will have to provide, and we were able to share this well out in front of when those letters are actually needed. So once we had district and teacher input and a large amount of buy-in, we began writing the detailed specifics of the curriculum for the 5-year outlay presented to teachers. This took us a little over 2 months to accomplish. We asked a few teachers who had submitted the survey information that basically we knew were 110% surely going to be participants from those interest meetings. They were the teachers that we knew very well locally. They'd supervised our teacher candidates in the field before, and they also gave us input as we made revisions to actually the curricular plan in the proposal. We didn't give them the whole proposal, but we gave them the things that they would be participating in. We truly wanted to know if what we were now describing in greater detail in the proposal regarding the curricular plan would continue to work for teachers once the nitty gritty and the details were put in there. Their input was very valuable to us. We asked a few of those teachers along the way to give us aspects, and we asked them some very specific things. How should we consider the experience of teachers that we'd recruit from, the grade levels that they were teaching, their backgrounds into the teaching profession, whether it was traditional models or alternative models, as well as the long-term incentives such as an advanced degree or national board certification beyond the life of the grant. This helped put our 3 phases of our curriculum together. So given all of those planning and interest sessions with teachers, we recognized a curriculum design was needed for stellar teachers of 2 categories that are permitted within Track 3s. We recognized that we had interest from teachers who did not have a master's degree, but had been stellar mentors of our teacher candidates or came highly recommended from administrators in our meeting with central office personnel, but also one that gave options to teachers that had master's degrees or even more advanced degrees. So our local solution was start with the master's degree cohort in year 1. That was a very small number of teachers who would participate in this. That meant that when awards generally are made by NSF in February or March or even into as far as April, you don't have a lot of turnaround time to start a cohort of teachers that May or June if you intend to start that summer. This model pushed our project proposal into the 2 cohort model in a 6-year project period. So this is not a requirement in Track 3s. You can go with a single cohort and obviously focus on only a 5-year project with a single cohort. But our local situation was that we had 2 different types of or groups of teachers that we found that we would be serving with our project. So we looked for ways to cross-list graduate master's degree coursework that was in our curriculum, as well as post-master's degree coursework for both the cohorts to be able to integrate seamlessly during year 2 of the project. So this had to be spelled out well in our proposal to see how the first and second cohorts would eventually be able to integrate over common experiences. The master's degree earning teachers completed 12 of their 30 hours of their master's degree at the onset before the second cohort ever joined the project. So while that was going on, we began recruiting the second cohort. It gave us a year to be able to do that. The 18 hours that you actually see here on this particular slide that's noted is essentially the common coursework that we had our teachers from both cohorts completing in our second year of our project. This is still considered our phase 1, which was our foundational work for what would upcome in the second and third phases. So our second phase was for our teachers to pursue national boards. Some teachers are obviously going to go through that faster than others. So those were aspects that we considered in how we planned this second phase. At this point, teachers also gave us the incentive, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at the very end, in that an educational specialist degree, post-master's degree award in our state is actually a permanent pay raise for teachers. So I'm going to mention that and come back to that in a little bit. That this advanced degree would be something that would help with recruitment, but it would also be something that we had actually very well tied to the intellectual merit of our project. So the teachers who were going faster with national boards in the second phase, we planned for those that went faster would be those that helped the teachers work through the second year of national boards if it takes them more than a year. That's where we saw our initial leadership of the teachers playing a role in our proposal. We also have in our third phase, and I'm not going to mention all of them, but there are a lot of leadership academies that we are doing in our final years of the project with the teachers, and some of them focus on instructional coaching, mentorship of new teachers, induction programs and support with new teachers, mentorship of in-service teachers who may be struggling. Leadership for professional learning groups, but also even offering professional development at the district or at the school level. That's just a few of the aspects that we will be doing in our third phase. So ultimately, you should have a curriculum at this point of the planning phase. In the last couple of months, we were writing the evaluation and research plan, but I want to refer to this and how it connects to the curricular plan. As at a research institution like the University of Alabama, we probably have very different expectation of our project outcomes than would be one of my colleagues who is at a high teaching load institution pursuing a Track 3 proposal. We wanted longitudinal data with validated instrumentation on all our master teachers for research purposes, but we also wanted teachers to understand that the data in our project is for our team to research the effectiveness of us, not them. Not their teaching and not their leading per se on an individual level, but rather collectively for the project. This was something we actually had discussions with the teachers when we had those interest meetings that I previously mentioned. So we leveraged our external evaluator as the data hub in the use of doctoral students to collect in-classroom observational data related to our project experiences of the teachers. The doctoral students in the evaluator are the only individuals who can link curricular parts of our project and data collected within those curricular parts of the project. That way, teachers can provide rich data throughout. They don't feel like they're being evaluated by our PI team and that we can't necessarily identify an individual teacher while we're working so closely with them in this project. However, that said, all of the teachers are aware that their data is de-identified, but that we can link it at the teacher level, but that at the end of this grant project, they have the opportunity to give permission about us unblinding the data. Now, that may not be something that's necessary in every single project, but at a research institution where we're engaging doctoral students as a core piece of our project, that research component was critical in our proposal in linking how things would be collected during our curriculum plan. So before our actual grant submission, we had one last meeting with a couple of the teachers that we knew were completely on board with this and had given us feedback prior. We mostly wanted to hear about how we would recruit and sell teacher participation based on what our final proposal was going to look like. Make sure that they felt comfortable with what the project evaluator was going to be doing with respect to collecting data and how that would happen. So we even consulted teachers who we knew had interest in this to be able to do that and know what would be appropriate and what they would be okay with in collecting during the different phases of this project. A critical aspect we do want to share here in the last couple of slides. Teacher feedback is critical. It allowed us to design a curriculum that they had input and desires to engage with. The idea that teachers and schools would benefit from something they participated with in the planning phase. 7 of our 24 master teachers gave us input from the very first meeting, interest meeting we had, all the way to that meeting, that follow-up that I just mentioned right before we had a submission of the proposal. All of these benefits of the curricular experiences shown here were what was presented to us over the course of the interest meeting, the planning phase, and the current stage of the project we are at today. Teachers were quick to point out that the 5-year salary supplements that Noyce Track 3s provide would go away at the end of the 5 years. And this was critical in us considering ways that the project would possibly be able to maintain that pay incentive after the 5-year commitment was up. That's how we found ways to innovate in putting an advanced degree beyond the master's degree in here, as well as the national boards component, because in our state, both of those essentially in salary wise would equate to at least what our master teacher fellow supplemental salary would be. The teachers made it very clear to us that, you know, if they had this large boost in income for participating in this project, you know, they would get used to that after 5 years. I don't know that we would have ever considered that when we were writing the curricular plan for this if we didn't have the teacher's voice involved. So last few hints in writing the curricular plan, it's going to require a lot of thinking. So this time frame that I've sort of presented here with those numbers of months and being out in front at 6 to 9 months, we were right at the place where we started to meet with teachers, probably about a week from now, those years ago when we were writing this. So I also emailed and talked with other funded PIs for Track 3s. I will tell you that others have reached out to me and asked me for aspects about our project. And most principal investigators are happy to provide you information and answers to your questions. I know others were with me and my team, and we will do the same for others. Discussions with master teacher fellows in some of those other projects nationally was a good aspect for us. It helped us to seek more administrator buy-in in how we wrote our proposal. And when we met with central office personnel in our partner districts, I don't know that we would have done that without talking to some other master teacher fellows who felt their project would have been more effective if they had a little more administrator buy-in. So beyond the PI team, you will want input from others along the way. While the advisory panel is not a requirement of NSF master teacher fellow proposals, it gives us fresh views annually from others outside of the project with knowledge of our project and goals. We also leveraged a retired teacher, a state teacher of the year, and a nationally board certified teacher as contracted personnel to help and share with the curriculum implementation of our project. With that, I'm going to stop. I'm probably a few minutes ahead.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. So I think we're going to hold some questions until the breakout room. So if you have any questions, please keep those in mind. But now we'll turn it over to our next presenters, Dr. Paige Evans and Jacqueline Ikova.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, I see Jackie nodding her head. Anyway, thank you so much for this opportunity to share some information about teachHOUSTON and our National Science Foundation Noyce Grant initiatives. My name is Paige Evans, and I'm a co-director for the teachHOUSTON program. I am joined by my colleague, Jacqueline Ikova. Unfortunately, Ramona Mateer had a family emergency and will not be joining us today. Before we get started, I would like to thank the National Science Foundation and the Noyce program for all of their support over the years. Next slide, please. Okay. In this presentation, I will provide a brief overview of the teachHOUSTON program and the Noyce grant initiatives. Then, Jacqueline Ikoba will discuss our culturally responsive curriculum and our new classroom management class that is both inquiry-based and culturally responsive. Next slide, please. teachHOUSTON is the University of Houston's STEM teacher preparation program and is designed to combat the shortage of highly qualified STEM teachers for the Houston area and across the nation. We are the first of 46 replication sites of the nationally acclaimed UTeach program at the University of Texas at Austin. Our program is a collaboration between the colleges of Natural Sciences and Mathematics and Education, along with high-need school districts. Students receive their STEM major and a minor in education in 4 years because the two colleges work together on streamlining the degree plans. Our curriculum is research-based, and our students start teaching in the classroom immediately. Additionally, we have several information learning and formal learning experiences that enhance their teaching preparation. This results in a new generation of highly qualified secondary STEM teachers. Next slide, please. Our highly qualified STEM teachers ignite enthusiasm in STEM. This results in better prepared students majoring in STEM at UH and other universities. It also results in more students completing STEM degrees. Next slide, please. We have 2 pathways for STEM teacher certification. Our traditional program is for undergraduate STEM majors who take the teachHOUSTON courses along with their STEM courses with no time or cost added to their degrees. So they receive their STEM major, a minor in education, along with a teaching certificate. Now, our accelerated pathway, which just started in 2019, is for career changers or seniors with only a few courses left. They receive their teacher certification in 9 months. Next slide, please. What is special about our program is that our pre-service teachers practice teaching in high-need classrooms with mentor teachers and their students. In our traditional pathway that I just talked about, our pre-service teachers have 3 semesters of teaching in high-need schools, followed by a full semester of student teaching. In our accelerated pathway, the pre-service teachers complete 60 hours of fieldwork prior to a full semester of student teaching. It is also important to point out that our University of Houston faculty have extensive experience as public school STEM teachers. Next slide, please. So I love this slide. So far, we have prepared 415 secondary STEM teachers, and our program continues to grow. It's important to note that this growth is directly related to our Noyce programs. Next slide, please. We are very proud of our diversity. When you look at this graph, you can see that teachHOUSTON is represented in red. The state of Texas is in blue, and the United States is represented in green. teachHOUSTON provides diverse teachers with great content knowledge, which improves student learning. This may lead to successful academic outcomes for our students of color, as they will have diverse STEM teachers as role models. Next slide, please. So as a result, we are making an impact. 90% of our graduates enter teaching. Out of those 90%, 95% are teaching in Greater Houston. 80% are teaching in high-need schools, and 88% teach beyond 5 years. Our teachers stay. This is largely due to the excellent preparation and also the mindset of our teachers, and that they truly want to give back to the community. Collectively, our teachHOUSTON teachers have taught approximately 290,000 students. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to highlight some of our Noyce grants. In 2012, we received a Noyce Track 1 grant called Recruitment, Preparation, and Retention of STEM Students as High School Teachers. This grant took place from 2012 to 2017. With this grant, I, along with Dr. Donna Stokes, who was the PI on the grant, and she is also a physics professor, created a physics course where the content was taught as inquiry. We did this because many of our student teachers would revert back to traditional models of teaching when they got to their student teaching semester. Thus, one of the main goals of the course was to change their mental model of teaching. Another main objective of this grant was to provide paid summer internships. So the interns would attend an internship institute where they would prepare to serve as camp counselors and teaching assistants in a residential STEM camp for underserved minority populations. This grant resulted in 34 secondary STEM teachers. Next slide, please. In our next Track 1 grant, Life, we took the Noyce Internship Institute a step further with the Noyce Professional Development and Mentoring Institute, or the NPDI for short. The NPDI provided the training for undergraduates to serve as camp counselors and teaching assistants in summer camps, just like the prior grant. But what was different about this is that our previous grant is that our graduates came back to put on the Institute. And not only did they put on the Internship Institute, they also provided instructional coaching for the interns that served as camp counselors and teaching assistants. We also created biology and chemistry inquiry courses. This grant resulted in 82 secondary STEM teachers. As you can see, we had a very diverse group of scholars. Next slide. After that, we received a Noyce Track 3 grant, which is still in progress. The Master Teacher Fellows received a master's degree in STEM education and also served as mentor teachers for our pre-service teachers. This grant is grounded in culturally responsive pedagogy and policy advocacy. Next slide, please. Most recently, we received another Noyce Track 1 grant called Access, which stands for Advancing Cultural and Computational Engagement in STEM Scholars. This grant targets physics, computer science, and technology majors. It also has a computer science inquiry course and a teacher interest group. The teacher interest group, which we call the TIG, meets once each month to build community, offer support, and provide opportunities to discuss social justice issues in education, as well as incorporate culturally responsive pedagogy into their lesson plans. Next, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jacqueline Ikoba, who will discuss our culturally responsive pedagogy initiatives within the Teach Houston program, as well as the classroom management course. Next slide, please.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Evans, and good afternoon to everyone joining us today. I'm Jacqueline Ikoba, one of the science master teachers at our Teach Houston program, and I work primarily with Ramona Mateer on our alternative certification pathway. So as we take a look back at our program's journey with culturally responsive pedagogy, we would not be where we are today without the support of Noyce funding and initiatives. Our program faculty formally learned about research in culturally responsive pedagogy, or CRP, at the Western Regional Noyce Conference in 2017, which spawned rich discussions that led to infusing CRP into our program's courses and informal STEM initiatives. Although the Teach Houston program specializes in developing pre-service teachers, our faculty developed a Noyce Track 3 Master's Fellowship Program in 2018, which focused on implementing CRP, STEM integration, and engineering design process with in-service STEM teachers. These Master Teacher Fellows have served as strong mentors to their peers on their own campuses, as well as our pre-service teachers in the pragmatic ways of using CRP and demonstrating its impact with their own students. Their mentorship has proven invaluable for both our undergraduate and post-bac students in our alternative certification pathway. Next slide, please. Before I go further into what the Noyce initiatives look like in using CRP in our program, I'd like to give a quick summary of how we introduced CRP to our faculty and students. CRP is a research-based approach to teaching. All students bring funds of knowledge to the classroom, including their own background knowledge, experiences, and skills. We refer to multiple scholars' work in our practice, most notably to Gloria Latson-Billings for her perspective on viewing CRP as 3 tenets: teaching for rigor, involving students' funds of knowledge, and addressing issues that impact their learning. Next slide, please. That being said, let's take a look at how we infuse CRP in our traditional pathway of teachHOUSTON. We created this image to show the proficiency progression of CRP based on Bloom's taxonomy in our field-based courses. Our faculty share various activities to provide common experiences for our students to draw upon in their development of the 3 tenets of CRP. Beginning at that first tier in the first course called Introduction to STEM Teaching, we bring up the importance of culture using a what is culture activity. We then build upon that in our next course, the awareness, and begin using common language to describe impacts and implicit and explicit biases through the Tale of Two Noras, as well as introducing the culturally responsive mathematics teaching rubric. When our students develop their project-based learning units in the multiple teaching strategies course, they are creating learning experiences based on gathered student data. And lastly, in the student teaching semester, they put everything into practice at their own pace, as prescribed by the coaching of our university supervisors. Next slide, please. For our 2-semester pathway, CRP is woven throughout using some of the same strategies mentioned as we've seen in our traditional pathway in the first semester. And we also incorporated additional activities to aid our expedited students in their development of CRP in their practice. Next slide. Some of these activities have been listed for you here, and we expect our students to implement some of these, such as the daily use of check-in activities to assess social emotional wellness. Our inquiry-based model lessons focus on different aspects of social justice, like from resources such as Rethinking Schools publications. Our students facilitate book study discussions, which we call community conversations, and participate in global collaborative projects on the platform iEarn to amplify their development of their roles as teachers impacting social justice issues that affect their students and their communities. Next slide, please. The foundation to our use of CRP is developing relationships. One of the activities that best builds commonalities between our students as individuals is the 8 Nouns activity and web reflections. Each student introduces themselves by only using 8 nouns. As a follow-up, they record those 8 nouns and draw connections to anyone that they share something in common with, hence the image you see on your screen. As you can see, there are connections between each student in the class, no matter what they put. Next slide, please. In fact, yes, you can go ahead and add those 4 larger sticky notes. Here we wanted to show the types of things that they use to describe themselves. So on the enlarged virtual sticky notes, our students share what might be considered surface level terms like sister or dancer or introvert, which open conversations among students about nouns they didn't use to describe themselves, but this built bonds as well as a safe and brave space for student discussions. Next slide, please. So as mentioned earlier, our program relies on a culturally responsive mathematics teaching rubric from Aguirre and Del Rosario Zavala. Although there are other rubrics to assess CRP in lesson planning, we learned about the CRMT rubric at the 2017 Noyce Summit, and found it to be a useful tool for our students. This resource was provided by Cal State Fullerton, and we've also modified it to use with our science lesson plans. The author suggested 3 strategies for effective use that we've implemented in all of our classes. Those being students analyzing videotape lessons using this tool, as well as analyzing other lesson plans. And of course, they provide peer feedback during practice teaches using this tool, or even just a portion of the tool as needed. Being able to provide peer feedback requires having collegial relationships and safe spaces to speak openly. Activities like the 8 Nouns and other community conversations make that possible. Next slide, please. So now let's take a look at our culturally responsive classroom management course that's taught by our colleague Ramona Mateer. As you've seen, CRP is embedded across the Teach Houston program. We were doing a fabulous job instructing our students about CRP and inquiry. However, the focus on CRP and classroom management was noticeably absent. Traditionally, classroom management skills were embedded in our courses in the form of classroom management strategies. The strategies were practiced in the field experiences included in each of the 4 courses I mentioned earlier. Additionally, the coursework students participated in was spread across several semesters, allowing a long lapse in time and practice. We heard concerns from students as well as university supervisors about the ability of our students to put into practice culturally responsive classroom management, as their classroom management training was coming primarily from their mentor teachers during student teaching, which may or may not be based on best practice. Additionally, inquiry lessons require a collaborative foundation that not all classroom management approaches support. We didn't want to leave our students' classroom management growth to chance in the field to address the very real requests that they had for additional support. Lastly, the Teach Houston graduates reported that they left their program with many skills, but still needed classroom management assistance. This aligns with it being the #1 requested focus for our new teacher induction professional development. Next slide, please. So we responded to these concerns by analyzing our program and developing a classroom management course focusing on culturally responsive pedagogy and community to support inquiry in the STEM classroom. The course, which occurs concurrently with student teaching, allows students the opportunity to try new learning and strategies in their student teaching experience. We see confidence grow throughout the semester and have positive reports from university supervisors regarding implementation of classroom management by our pre-service teachers. The classroom management course supports students in identifying culturally responsive practices by analyzing authentic classroom management scenarios and evaluating the effective cultural responsiveness in the solutions. The students discuss and develop methods to develop student connectedness to one another. Also, our students are challenged to develop their own classroom management philosophies and evaluate them in the classroom environment for relatability and effectiveness. They are expected to grow their philosophies as they grow their classroom management effectiveness during student teaching. Also, some time is spent exploring the role of brain development in student behaviors and how understanding brain development can help teachers manage their students. They learn that engaging students in the development of rules and in making choices about their actions leads to metacognition for future choices. The course allows for the study of multiple foundations of classroom management, including theory and current management trends. Students are taught how to seek out resources and resolve problems when they are in their teaching assignments beyond graduation. Students identify and practice current management strategies to support inquiry in the STEM classroom, including building community and cultural responsiveness. They learn strategies to teach their students to value one another and the value of contributions of all class members. This is a large part of successful inquiry implementation. Therefore, our course focuses on part on the need for students to be taught how to work in collaborative groups respectfully and with authentic appreciation for their peers. Lastly, each student develops a classroom management plan intended for use in their first year of teaching. Next slide, please. So one thing we do want to clarify is this course is not a bag of tricks or strategies that students can check off, but rather it's rooted in learning theories and cognitive approaches to student management. It requires students or teachers to commit to building a solid community in their classroom that begins with the development of classroom expectations by all stakeholders, the students and teachers. It also requires our students to look at their personal biases, beliefs about respect, and student-teacher interactions, and building appropriate student-teacher relationships. The goal is to create an intellectual and safe learning environment that helps their students build intellectual capacity for self-management that can be relied upon by any individual class. Next slide, please. And I'm going to go through these next ones a little quick, but here we have an example of our students analyzing student behaviors and teacher roles. Next slide, please. We also have another example of discussions that occur in our class, and if you haven't noticed, we enjoy using Jamboard in our classes, but here we have discussions on community building. Next slide, please. And then lastly, here we have students furthering their exploration of community building. This is important because this is part of their classroom management plan. Next slide, please. All right. So we are now in our third semester of the classroom management course and have already begun receiving feedback from students. A few of the comments are provided here. One of Ramona's favorite is, when we started, the only rule I needed was for my students to bring their best self. I now know that that is not possible if I don't help them find who that self is. Also, the young student who said, I am still nervous, but now I know it is a journey and I have to be the driver, developed a sense of confidence over the course of the semester. And Ramona shared that that was just a wonderful experience being a part of all of these students' journeys. The most exciting part of the work we've begun in large part of the Noyce grant is the number of students impacted by our graduates. And at this time, I'm going to actually hand it back over to Dr. Evans.
Okay, regardless of whether they are teaching in the classroom or acting as camp counselors, they are impacting students everywhere. So please enjoy this short video illustrating the impact on our Noyce interns and the students that they reach. This particular camp took place during the pandemic. Because of COVID-19, we adjusted our internship institute and camp to a virtual format where teachHOUSTON students were able to see the breadth of cultural diversity as they were working with students from all over the world. So if you could play that short video, that would be great.
STEM was always something that was very daunting to me, and it wasn't until I got to experience programs like THSI that I really began to believe that I could become a scientist, that I could become a biologist.
teachHOUSTON means a lot to me, not only academically, but personally, because I am able to serve as a role model for children that look like me, children with a background similar to me, and showing them that we can be scientists too.
I am definitely very thankful for this experience. It has taught me a lot, and I hope if there's a part 2, I'm able to come back and be a part of it.
Seeing all the students from around the world, that was really amazing to me, seeing how many students we had that were interested in, in participating in this.
They found a way to show us who they were through their work, and that was just amazing.
And seeing them grow week after week has been a great experience.
Hi, my name is Alana, and this is my roller coaster.
It was so amazing to see so many students around the world just engage and have fun activities with them and just interact with them. This is something that I would definitely take on and never forget.
I love this experience. I've honestly, in my soul, I felt like I've never been good at science, but throughout this whole week and the past 3 weeks, you've made me feel better about myself. You've made me feel better. I feel so great. Thank you so much.
Still tears me up. Little Arwen, she was just precious. Lastly, I'd like to thank you for attending this webinar and also for this opportunity to share our Noyce initiatives that have not only strengthened our program over the years, but also resulted in many more STEM majors teaching secondary STEM. I would also like to acknowledge the American Association for Advancement of Sciences, ARISE, and the National Science Foundation. And then lastly, on the last slide, we have some references, but thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Paige and Jacqueline. So we're now going to transition into breakout room discussions and Q&A sessions to explore some of these topics further and really discuss with each other and get a chance to discuss with the speakers. Great, I see everyone is back in the main session. So I'm wondering if we can get our speakers to share a brief recap of what their discussion room talked about and just some closing thoughts. So I'll turn it over to Jeremy first.
All right, so I had a number of questions in mind, and they were all, important questions that everybody needed to consider. So even those that didn't ask questions in my group, those will be the questions and some of my responses, all important things. I think the bigger recap for me is that, the Master Teacher Fellows have a lot of moving parts, and you're going to really propose a curriculum that is to help you reach the goals of yours. I mean, one of the questions in mind was dealing with a much larger emphasis on future principalship potentially for master teachers. And that's not something we want to pull our teachers out of the classroom, become principals, but that's another project that's very different than ours. So really considering what's going to help you reach your goals is what you're going to put together in a curriculum. That's probably the best way to describe what was in mind. And then there's obviously so many moving parts in terms of a 5-year commitment of what teachers can do in addition to their full-time teaching jobs. That's another part that you have to make serious considerations about.
Awesome, thank you. Sounds like a great discussion. Paige and Jacqueline, would you like to share?
I'll share what I recall. Jacqueline did a better job because she took notes and I did not. But anyway, there were a lot of questions about the logistics of our coursework, as well as the logistics of culturally responsive pedagogy and how we decided to put what aspect into what course and how we assess that in our program. There were also questions about classroom management and how do we fit that classroom management into an already packed course sequence, and what does it count as? Does it count as an elective? Is it required? And so on. Anyway, great questions, rich discussions, and I'll turn it over to Jacqueline.
I think you summarized that perfectly, but one thing that definitely came up in those discussions is also at the university level, deciding on which courses we kept, why we didn't keep them, and maybe even those trade-offs that we felt were important to make. And then also just the desire for shared resources. So we definitely do want to give those out as requested.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. And thank you to all of our presenters. I just have a quick slide to close, but I just want to thank all of our presenters, Jeremy, Paige, Jacqueline, as well as the rest of the AAAS ARISE team, which includes Travis York, Betty Kellinger, and Thomas Bagu, as well as all of you who were able to join and participate in the webinar today. We do have a post-event survey, and we really value your feedback. So if you could take a few minutes to fill that out, that would be great. A link is posted in the chat, and it'll also be emailed to you. If you would like to get involved in the ARISE network by writing a blog, presenting at one of these webinars, or sharing your research, please reach out to us. at Noyce at AAAS.org. And to stay up to date, please follow us on social media, as well as subscribe to our mailing list. So once again, thank you all for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.